Thank you. First item of business is portfolio questions for set, government, business and constitutional relations. Question 1 not lodged. Question 2, Donald Cameron, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on the cost for the Citizens' Assembly of Scotland.
Cabinet Secretary Michael Russell.
Presiding Officer, we announced a budget of £1.37 million for the Citizens' Assembly last October. This remains the estimated budget. Final costs will be published after the Citizens' Assembly has finished its work.
Donald Cameron.
Since announcing the taxpayer-funded Citizens' Assembly, the SNP government have done little to allay fears that it is anything more than a talking shop for another divisive independence referendum. If the Citizens' Assembly were to recommend that there should not be another independence referendum, can the Cabinet Secretary confirm that the Scottish Government will respect that decision and take it off the table?
Cabinet Secretary.
I think that Mr Cameron should talk to his colleague Jamie Halcrow-Johnson, because he was at the Citizens' Assembly this weekend as part of the panel, politicians' panel, which was a resource for the Citizens' Assembly. And I welcome that constructive engagement from the Tory party with the Citizens' Assembly. I welcome the fact that the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland was there. I welcome the fact that there was a Green representative. I welcome the fact that Angela Constance was there representing the SNP. The only party that wasn't there were the Liberal Democrats, who are becoming the Free Presbyterians of Scottish politics. They just don't take part. So why does Mr Cameron not recognise that good work is being done by the Conservatives in supporting the Citizens' Assembly, for which I think we are all pleased and grateful?
Question 3, Daniel Johnson.
The Scottish Government whether it will consider bringing forward to the Parliamentary Bureau a proposal for a debate on neurodiversity.
Minister Graham Day.
Presiding Officer, I thank Mr Johnson for highlighting an important issue, namely the neurodiversity. The Scottish Government is committed to creating a fair and equal Scotland, one where people are treated with dignity and respect. But proposals for government business in Parliament are set by the Cabinet prior to consideration by the Parliamentary Bureau. Individual ministers will seek debating slots ahead of that according to a variety of factors and available opportunities. I have to advise Mr Johnson, however, that between legislative, committee and opposition business, the upcoming parliamentary calendar is extremely congested.
Daniel Johnson.
I thank the Minister for that answer. The Government has received much criticism in recent months for its failure to bring forward education debates on its own time. Indeed, when you look at the issue of neurodiversity, it's been 8 years since we had a debate on dyslexia. These are issues that cut across numerous portfolios, but also create acute need on behalf of those who have neurodevelopmental disorders. So will the Minister commit to a proper in-depth debate so we can establish consensus and look at how this policy agenda can be taken forward across Scotland?
Minister.
President Officer, I recognise entirely the importance of this subject and Mr Johnson's championing of it. And I also know that the Minister for Mental Health would be happy to see the subject explored in the Chamber. But I've offered them a realistic and honest assessment of the pressures on plenary debating time, at least for the foreseeable future. Can I perhaps suggest a practical and positive way forward in the form of his bringing forward members' business on this topic, which will allow not only himself but other members of the Chamber the chance to contribute, and of course the relevant Minister to outline the Government's position?
Question 4, James Kelly.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what support it is providing to local authorities in preparation for Brexit.
Minister.
The Scottish Government is providing support in a variety of ways. It has worked collaboratively with COSLA, allocating £50,000 to each local authority, a total of £1.6 million to support planning for an EU exit. We've also fully funded 2 seconded officials to COSLA as a dedicated resource to support coordination and operational readiness across councils. In addition to this, the Scottish Government has administered almost £1.4 million of Treasury operational contingency funding to local authorities in support of additional costs relating to export health certificates.
James Kelly.
Thank the Minister for that answer. Can I draw the Minister's attention to the particular case of Glasgow in terms of funding? A 2019 report demonstrated that the extent of Brexit in Glasgow covered up to £2.35 billion and 38,000 jobs. Therefore, a disorderly Brexit would have a devastating impact on Glasgow. So can I then urge the Minister to ensure that appropriate consideration is given to the City of Glasgow in terms of council funding in preparation for Brexit?
Minister.
Presiding Officer, it's a fact that the Scottish Government engages closely with COSLA and local authorities directly on the issue of Brexit, a Brexit not of our making, it has to be said, as Mr Kelly well knows. We will continue to do that. We engage closely both in terms of funding and preparation, and we recognise the role that local authorities continue to play in steering Scotland through this Brexit, which, as I say, was not of our making.
Question 5, Liam Kerr.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what discussions it has had with victims of crime regarding the Scottish Elections Franchise and Representation Bill.
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, the Scottish Government recognises that some victims of crime may oppose giving the right to vote to prisoners, and this has been taken into account in our proposal, which restricts voting to those serving sentences of 12 months or less. During the development of our public consultation on prisoner voting, which launched in December 2018, officials met with representatives from Victim Support Scotland. This consultation paper was provided to victim groups upon its launch. A total of 256 responses were received. I extended a personal offer to meet with members of the Victims Organisation Collaboration Forum Scotland prior to the introduction of the Scottish Elections Franchise and Representation Bill, and that invitation remains open. I would be happy to meet with victims' organisations to discuss the issue.
Liam Kerr.
Yeah, thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The SNP's plan to extend the franchise to prisoners would be a slap in the face to victims of crime, and I'm interested to know this fact has been taken into account. It would be logistically challenging, puts candidates and prison staff in unnecessary danger, and is based on a misunderstanding of case law. Wouldn't the Cabinet Secretary's time be better spent addressing issues like overcrowding, lack of through care, and the exhaustion and dangers to prison officers, rather than yet again putting criminals before victims?
Cabinet Secretary.
The gross misrepresentation, I have to say, that we've just heard does no credit to the member. The member is aware that the ruling from the European Court means that we have to take forward a change in this process. The question is how we do it. We've done it proportionally, we've done it thoughtfully, we're trying to do it sensitively, and as I indicated, I would be keen to talk to victims and to their representatives. What we've just heard there is knee-jerk, it has no facts to it, and it doesn't do anything to take this issue forward. I think we should all regret that a member chooses to behave in that way.
Mark Ruskell.
Thank you. Is the Cabinet Secretary continuing to engage with legal expertise over the franchise bill? Because there are legal experts who remain concerned that the blanket disenfranchisement of prisoners serving more than 1 year sentences will be illegal and could be struck down by the European Court of Human Rights.
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, the member is aware that I disagree with that opinion. He knows that we have thought very carefully about this, and he also knows, because he is a member of the committee, that stage 2, the committee supported the government's proposal on the 1 year. So that will come to this chamber, and the members will decide on what they wish to do. I'm always happy to debate and discuss, but I think we put in place the right proposal for this time, and I would urge members to support it.
Question 6, Brian Whittle. It would help if you were paying attention, Mr Whittle.
I apologise.
Thank you very much.
To ask the Scottish Government what legal and other advice it has received regarding the implementation of the referendum's Scotland Bill.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government draws on legal advice as appropriate from their lawyers, from counsel, from external solicitors and from the law officers. Other than in exceptional circumstances, the Government does not comment on the content or source of legal advice, and legal advice remains confidential. This reflects the public interest in the provision of free and frank legal advice, maintaining the right of confidentiality of communications between legal advisers and clients. I can confirm that the Scottish Government has started discussions with the Electoral Commission and the Electoral Management Board regarding the creation of guidance which is required under the framework.
Brian Whittle.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? I do recognise the Scottish Government's desire to drive for independence. I think the clue is in the name. But can I ask what considerations have been given to the majority of Scots who have expressly indicated their objections to even holding another divisive independence referendum?
Cabinet Secretary.
Presiding Officer, if Mr Whittle was paying attention on the 12th of December, let alone today, he would have discovered that in the results of that election, 47 plus 1, we know the details of that, members out of 59 were SNP. And that means that people, when they were asked in a first-past-the-post election. Those were the rules that applied. When people were asked, they said they wanted the right to choose. That is the position of Scotland. It is the duty of the Scottish Government to deliver on that instruction, and the anti-democratic position of the Tories, which you hear from the shouting, the anti-democratic position of the Tories cannot stand on this matter. It would be far better if they accepted the right that exists and the mandate that exists, rather than trying to resist it, because it makes them look very bad, very negative, and it makes them look as if they don't care a jot for what the people of Scotland thinks, which is actually true.
Question 7, Gil Patterson.
Many thanks, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to the Prime Minister's decision not to grant a Section 30 order in relation to the second independence referendum.
Cabinet Secretary.
The rejection, Presiding Officer, by the UK Government of the people of Scotland's right to choose is further demonstration of the need for Scotland's future to be put in Scotland's hands. That is an utterly uncontroversial opinion. We're keeping our options open how to respond to the UK Government's refusal to accept the mandate given to the Scottish Government by the people who live in Scotland. The First Minister will provide an update on the Government's next steps shortly.
Gil Patterson.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, and I'm sure he will agree with me that the Prime Minister's undemocratic rejection of Scotland's right to choose is simply unsustainable. So, for the avoidance of any doubt, can the Cabinet Secretary outline what the measures the Scottish Government is taking to protect Scotland's interests ahead of being dragged out of the EU next week by a Tory government that Scotland didn't vote for and is likely never to?
Cabinet Secretary.
There will be a range of events and announcements next week which are designed to draw attention to two things. The first of which is that Scotland did not vote to leave the EU and does not wish to leave the EU. The second is that we wish to remain close to the EU so that we can re-enter in the shortest period possible. And it is, of course, very significant that from a week on Friday at 11 p.m, the only route to be a member of the EU, the only route for us to regain our European citizenship is to choose independence and to use that as a means of re-entering the EU. Other routes are blocked. The status quo finishes. So I would encourage the people of Scotland to think on that, to continue to support that as they're doing in increasing numbers, and to move forward so that they have the right to choose. And that is the issue. Do they wish to be part of the EU, as they've said repeatedly, or do they wish to be part of Boris Johnson's bonging Brexit?
Adam Tompkin.
How long is a generation?
Cabinet Secretary.
According to the UK Government and the procedures that is put in place in Northern Ireland, 4 years, because that is the time between for them to decide, or 8 years if there's no cross-community support. That is the UK Government's definition of a generation. I just wish it would keep to it.
Thank you. The member is not here for question 8, so I'll take a short pause before we move on to the next set of portfolio questions. These are questions on culture, tourism and external affairs. Question 1, Margaret Mitchell, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. Task Scottish Government what it's doing to preserve buildings and landmarks of historic interest.
Cabinet Secretary Fiona Hislop.
The Scottish Government preserves and protects buildings and landmarks of historic interest through the work of our lead public body, Historic Environment Scotland. This includes providing £14.5 million annually for grant schemes which enable the repair and revitalisation of the historic environment. Last year, funding was provided to the internationally celebrated New Lanark World Heritage Site of £180,000 for their annual maintenance plan, as well as targeted funding for individual local concerns like the David Livingstone Centre in South Lanarkshire, which received over £600,000 for conservation standard repairs.
Margaret Mitchell.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer. The Hamilton Mausoleum built as a monument to and tomb for the 10th Duke of Hamilton is an iconic landmark of huge culture and historic interest in Lanarkshire, which has now got water damage and needs repaired urgently. The Save the Hamilton Mausoleum Trust has been set up and a local campaign launched by the Hamilton Advertiser to raise funds to repair the damage before it spirals out of control. Will the Cabinet Secretary add her support to this initiative, and can she suggest any organisation who could match fund or provide any other support to help ensure this essential work is completed as soon as possible?
Cabinet Secretary.
I am aware of the importance of the Hamilton Mausoleum and the campaign that's being run. Indeed, it was subject to a question at the last portfolio questions by Monica Hamilton. I know that there is cross-party support from my SNP colleagues and also from her party in taking forward this campaign. As I said previously in my answer just a few weeks past, Historic Environment Scotland has not been approached regarding the building, but would welcome the opportunity to work with any parties that come forward to help identify ways to secure its sustainable future management. I know South Lanarkshire Council leader has acknowledged the commitment of the Council to preserving the cultural importance of the building, but I think it will mean everybody has to come together to make sure that there's a sustainable future for what is a very important part of Scotland and also Lanarkshire's heritage.
Question 2, Ruth Maguire.
Presiding Officer, to ask the Scottish Government how it will support residents and community groups in North Ayrshire seeking to take part in the Year of Coasts and Waters 2020.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is providing match funding via Events Scotland for a number of events celebrating Scotland's Year of Coasts and Waters 2020 in North Ayrshire. These include the Making Waves Festival at Irvin's Beach Park in Harbourside, Signal at Dusk by Cryptic on Irvine Beach, plus the Fife Yachts Regatta off Largs, visits from travelling galleries and participants in the National Skiff Row-Around, and performances by the Nevis Ensemble. We have also launched the Micro Local Area Grant Fund, MOLAG, fulfilling our programme for government commitment to offer one-off grants for community groups, charities and social enterprises right across Scotland to hold themed year's events related to the Year of Coasts and Waters 2020. Applications may be made via the YouthLink website until the 14th of February.
Ruth Maguire.
I thank the Cabinet Secretary for the answer. As she mentioned, there are a number of events already planned, including the Opera and Art on Irvine Beach. Will the Cabinet Secretary join me in encouraging local groups to apply for the available funding to put on more, and indeed folk from around the country to pay Ayrshire a visit? And would she herself like to join us at one of the events that are planned?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, having seen the programme that is now being put together in North Ayrshire, I would be delighted to try and attend some of these events. But as she points out, these major events have already been organised, but such is the interest and demand to do more by local community groups that we've opened up this small grant scheme. So I think it's an opportunity for people to celebrate right across Scotland. We have much to tell about our coast, yes, but also our waters, our canals, our lochs, our rivers. That is the story of Scotland, and I'm looking forward to hearing those stories when the year gets into full swing. Those of you who have already seen Storm, the giant 10-metre puppet parading through Glasgow's part of Celtic Connection, will realise it really is capturing people's imagination this year, the Year of Scotland's Coast and Waters.
Question 3, Alison Johnson.
To ask the Scottish Government what funding it provides to support the Edinburgh Christmas and New Year celebrations and what criteria are applied.
Minister Ben McPherson.
In 2019, Edinburgh's Hogmanay received £160,000 worth of an award from the Event Scotland International Programme to support the Torchlight Procession on the 30th of December, together with £48,500 worth of international marketing support. Also in Edinburgh, the Event Scotland Winter Festivals Fund awarded £3,000 to the Edinburgh International Magic Festival, Hogmanay House at Lauriston Castle. During 2019-21, City of Edinburgh Council will receive £400,000 worth of funding from the Platform for Creative Excellence Fund, Place Fund, to present international artists working in collaboration with Scottish street theatre companies as part of the street party at Hogmanay. In addition, as we started the Year of Coast and Waters 2020, Edinburgh's maritime heritage has been the focus of the latest Message of the Skies initiative, a free event of poetry and outdoor light projections running until the 25th of January and supported by £150,000 worth of funding from the Festival's Expo Fund. The assessment process and funding of the Festival's Expo Fund and the Place Fund are administered by Creative Scotland, and Event Scotland administer the Winter Festivals Fund and the International Funding Programme. Different criteria apply to each funding process and are set out on the respective websites.
Alison Johnson.
Thank you. The Minister will be well aware of the reported controversies surrounding this year's celebrations, in particular concerns that commercial interests were trumping those of community wellbeing and wellbeing more generally. Now, we want local people and visitors alike to enjoy celebrating in our capital city, but we must commit to protect Princess Street Gardens' precious parks, that much-loved part of the World Heritage Site. So what can the Scottish Government do to protect our parks and public assets and ensure our communities have full access to them?
Minister.
Thank you. The contract with Underbelly for Edinburgh Christmas resides solely with City of Edinburgh Council, and for clarity, the Scottish Government has never funded any support for Edinburgh Christmas. As Alison Johnson has alluded to, there is a debate in the City of Edinburgh around the future of the winter festivals as a whole, including the use of Princess Street Gardens, Edinburgh Christmas and the Hogmanay celebrations. And the Council will indeed soon be launching a consultation, and I would encourage residents and businesses to engage with that. The important message that was also relayed in Alison Johnson's supplementary was that these are important festivals that attract people from all around the world and visitors from Scotland, including from the City of Edinburgh. And as we move forward, we should seek to enhance and preserve the celebrations while also considering the other issues concerning use of public space and how to make sure that we do preserve Edinburgh for years to come.
Rachel Hamilton.
Officer, the Minister will be aware that Marketing Edinburgh has had 89% of its funding cut due to council cuts from this government. Chief Executive Marketing Edinburgh, John Donnelly, has expressed his concern that Edinburgh will be the only European city left without a marketing organisation. Does the Minister agree with me that whilst we need tourism management in Edinburgh to deal with over-tourism, the Scottish Government should properly support the Council financially to ensure that we continue to attract new tourism in a sustainable way and also to provide consideration for local residents?
Minister.
The considerations around Edinburgh City Council's provision of marketing are questions for Edinburgh City Council. I would just reiterate what I said in my initial answer, was that as part of the award for Edinburgh's Hogmanay this year, the Scottish Government provided £48,500 worth of international marketing support through the Event Scotland International Programme.
Question 4, Jeremy Balfour.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government what organisations it has met to discuss Edinburgh's preparations for the festivals in summer 2020.
Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government regularly meets with representatives of all the major festivals and also participates in both the Festivals Forum and the Thundering Hoo Steering Group. Both forums are key to the planning of the Edinburgh Festivals, incorporating lessons learned from previous years to maximise preparedness for forthcoming editions. Both forums are represented by Festivals Edinburgh, British Council Scotland, City of Edinburgh Council, Creative Scotland, Scottish Enterprise and the Scottish Government. And the Festival Forum also includes Edinburgh Chamber of Commerce, Edinburgh Tourism Action Group, Marketing Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh and Visit Scotland.
Jeremy Balfour.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for her answer? The Edinburgh Festivals that we've heard already are an obvious benefit to Edinburgh and to Scotland's economies. However, complaints in the wake of the 2019 festivals, particularly by Lothian buses and local residents, lacked the lack of planning that went on by Edinburgh City Council. Will the Scottish Government commit to reduce such problems in 2020 by working closely with those affected by the festivals?
Cabinet Secretary.
I gave a comprehensive list in my first answer of the different organisations that work together in some of the planning issues. Can I say, in relation to responsibility for council affairs, we quite frequently, as ministers, are told not to interfere with local councils, and then the next week we're being told to interfere with local councils. So I think we have to respect the democratic independence of Edinburgh City Council on most of the issues that are being raised so far. However, in relation to some of the transport issues, not just affecting Edinburgh but wider across Scotland, there was an Edinburgh Events Transport Summit that was staged on the 5th of December 2019. It involved a number of different organisations, including, for example, Scottish Rugby Union, because clearly some of the issues relate to when there are different events happening at different times. Transport Scotland has helped facilitate discussions between festival organisations and events organisers. That was through the Edinburgh Festivals Forum Working Group. I just referred to that previously. They met on the 20th of November, and as I said, there was an Edinburgh Events Transport Summit staged on the 5th of December, precisely to address some of the issues that the member raises.
Gordon MacDonald.
Officer, can the Cabinet Secretary highlight what impact the Tory government's plans to impose further restrictions on EU workers coming to Scotland will have on our internationally acclaimed festivals this year?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, there are a number of areas, not least that people who live and work in Scotland are deeply affected, and we have serious concerns and want to reach out. Indeed, our First Minister again reiterated our commitment and support of EU workers just on Monday at an event here in Edinburgh. In relation to artists, we're holding a visa summit, which I've previously indicated to Parliament. That will now take place in February 2020 to discuss some of the issues about artist movement. But there's also an issue about visitors. And make no mistake that the attitude of the UK government, its attitude towards Europe, will affect how people see this country, and it's absolutely essential that we send out a message that we in Scotland are open, want to welcome visitors, yes, to our festivals, but at other times of the year. And this government will do everything we can to ensure that tourists still come to Scotland, still come to our festivals, and support our fantastic offer to the world when it comes to arts at this time.
Question 5, Peter Chapman.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government how it supports traditional culture in the North East.
Before you answer, Cabinet Secretary, Mr Chapman, I would have anticipated an apology for you coming in late. You've just come in before your question. I know we're early, but these are follow-on debates, and I say that to all members. You really would have been better if you'd done that, because I was toying with not calling you, and then I was feeling magnanimous, and you've spoilt it. Cabinet Secretary.
The Scottish Government is committed to supporting and promoting traditional Scottish culture and the Scots language. We fund a variety of groups and initiatives which are supporting the Scots language and traditional culture across Scotland and in the North East, such as the Doric Board, who offer financial awards between £250 and £1,000, providing support to projects that promote Doric culture and heritage. Scots Radio, who broadcasts in Scots and engages with the Scottish-speaking community, and together they have also successfully established Aberdeenshire's first ever Doric Film Festival. Creative Scotland provide regular funding to a variety of arts and cultural groups in the North East area, such as the Aberdeen Performing Arts, Dance North, Creative Dundee, Devon Projects, Dundee Contemporary Arts and the Dundee Repertory Theatre. In addition, the Scottish Trad Music Awards took place in Aberdeen last year with funding from Creative Scotland and support from MG Alpha.
Peter Chapman.
Thank you, and I do apologise, President Officer, for coming in late. So I hope that put me back in the good books again. So hopefully we'll be all right. I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer, and it was a full answer. And she's right, the Doric language is a big part of the culture and heritage of the North East. And as a member of that, for that reason, I'd like to ask the rest of the question in Doric. And I would just say that the Doric tongue is the most important dialect spoken in the North East of Scotland and is an important part of life across the North East. Doric is heard every day in work and schools all across the North East, and I believe it should be thought of as just as important as English and Gaelic. The Scottish Government has spent a lot in Gaelic and have seen great success in keeping the language alive and relevant. So will the Scottish Government commit to the same levels of funding for Doric to prevent FD and to preserve an important part of our culture?
You've redeemed yourself, Mr Chapman. That was delightful. Cabinet Secretary.
I think the member will be aware, particularly at times of budget negotiations, I can't commit to anything particularly in terms of future funding. But I take the point that he's making, but he'll appreciate that there's a journey to go in terms of our support, and the setting up of the Doric Board is really important. He makes a vital point about Doric being spoken right through families' lives. It's a normal part of everyday life in every part of the North East. I also would commend the fact that there are many young champions of Doric, not least Iona Fife, who got the Young Scots Speaker of the Year award at the Scottish Language Awards. So these are things that are developing pace and profile, but I think it's important that we champion Doric. I'm happy to do so, and I appreciate the member's interest in the issue.
Question 6, Tom Arthur.
To ask the Scottish Government how it promotes Scottish-Irish relations.
Cabinet Secretary.
The bilateral relationship with Ireland is a priority for the Scottish Government. The Scottish Government office in Ireland opened in 2016, and in the past 4 years, a team of 5 officials has worked to deepen our political, cultural, community and economic links and increase our engagement. As an expression of our ongoing commitment, the Scottish and Irish governments recently launched a joint strategic review in which we will take stock of the current relationship and identify priority areas for future collaboration. Following the internal and external consultations, it is envisaged that a report will be collated by officials in the second quarter of 2020, highlighting the value of current Irish-Scottish relations and making recommendations for future cooperation.
Tom Arthur.
Can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for that answer? My constituency of Renfrewshire South is home to many, including myself, who are of Irish descent, and many of my constituents maintain strong family connections with Ireland. Can I therefore ask the Cabinet Secretary what opportunities there will be for my constituents, and indeed the Irish diaspora across Scotland, to engage with the strategic review?
Cabinet Secretary.
There are many family and other relations with Ireland across Scotland in different parts, and he's relayed as part of his constituency. I think the warmth with which the relationship is held was testament when Simon Coveney, the Tánaiste, came to Parliament, and the warm reception he received from MSPs from across the chamber. If people want to take part, we want everyone to take part. We know that there are lots of different interests, whether it's on trade, whether it's on culture, on a whole variety of areas. But individuals can take part with a joint questionnaire that has been launched, seeking the views of individuals and other groups and stakeholders. It's open till the 20th of March. It can be found on the Scottish Government website, and we're delighted that the Irish Government is also taking forward that questionnaire. So it's a joint initiative, and if people want to have their view of the current state of that relationship and what they want to do in the future, I would direct people to the questionnaire that's been launched.
Claire Baker.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I have to admit, until the question was lodged today, I wasn't aware of the questionnaire. So I wonder if the Cabinet Secretary could say more about what has been done to promote the questionnaire, because the desire is there will be a diversity of responses from all of Scotland's people. So how can we ensure an inclusive approach has been taken to this work?
Cabinet Secretary.
The questionnaire was launched just before Christmas. We promoted it again using the normal press over the weekend. I did interviews with the Irish media at the time. There is a social media link to this, and so I will circulate that when I get back to my office this afternoon. I look forward to Claire Baker and others communicating it through social media as well. But it is something that has already received hundreds of responses, which for any questionnaire or any involvement from the Scottish Government is very, very good. So I would say it's actually been a strong response so far, but I would appreciate all members championing that throughout their constituencies and using their own social media accounts as well.
Question 7, David Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the Scottish Government whether it will provide an update on progress with finding a new location for the Ironworks music venue in Inverness.
Cabinet Secretary.
The member will be aware that I've encouraged public agencies to work constructively on this issue. I'm aware that on the 2nd of December, Mr Stewart met with the Ironworks Music Venue Limited and other public sector partners to discuss a location for the Ironworks. Later this month, Highlands and Islands Enterprise expects that we'll have the review of the business model options and financial forecasts, and a meeting will soon take place between the Ironworks property advisor and the developers of the Rose Street Hall. With our partners, we will continue to support the Ironworks Music Venue Limited in finding another venue.
David Stewart.
Presiding Officer, I'm very grateful to the Cabinet Secretary for her reply and for a helpful recent meeting. The Ironworks has had the threat of homelessness hanging over it for many months, and I've been campaigning vigorously to try and ensure that a new home is found. The Ironworks has iconic status in the Highlands and is a key element in the Highland capital's cultural gravitational pool. Can the Cabinet Secretary ask her officials at Creative Scotland to redouble their efforts to save this jewel in the crown of Highland cultural life?
Cabinet Secretary.
The member has been persistent in his support of finding a new venue. I think it's very important that we spread the message that the Ironworks venue is not closed, that they are continuing to have events, and we need to make sure that they are well supported. And I think that's an important part of making sure there's a venue for the future. We've got to make sure that the business model and indeed the activity and indeed the concerts continue to flow. So I absolutely recognise that it has an iconic status. It's extremely popular, and I've been very impressed with the goodwill towards it and the real drive from across public agencies to make sure that the Ironworks venue can continue and the fantastic opportunities for music making and concerts continue in Inverness.
Question 8, Liz Smith.
To ask the Scottish Government what its response is to Historic Environment Scotland's decision to delist Auchterarder Castle from the scheduled monument protection.
Cabinet Secretary.
Auchterarder Castle was removed from the schedule of monuments on the 19th of September 2019. Compiling and maintaining the schedule is a legal function of Historic Environment Scotland, and ministers do not have a role. On the same date, the castle was designated, together with an adjacent farmhouse, as a C-listed building. There is currently an appeal against that listing, and as such it would not be appropriate for ministers to comment further. I wrote to the member recently about these issues on the 13th of January in response to her recent letter, and this issue was also raised with me by Rosanna Cunningham, the local constituency MSP.
Liz Smith.
Could I thank the Cabinet Secretary? I'm very aware of the legal issues and why she cannot make further comment upon that. She will also know that this is an issue that has caused very considerable concern amongst the local community, not least because it has very strong historical connections in the Robert Bruce Castle, etc. Does the Minister, Cabinet Secretary, feel that there is a precedent, however, being set about this, and that is something that she would like to review with Historic Environment Scotland about the criteria that are used when it comes to descheduling any of these monuments?
Cabinet Secretary.
Well, Historic Environment Scotland are very well aware of the issues and concerns that have been expressed locally. I would say that designations and redesignations happen quite frequently. This is a normal practice to do that, but obviously there has to be reference to the criteria. I would also want to make clear that with regard to concerns about the issues, and quite often people get concerned that if there are changes in designations, does that affect the future of the building and particularly any threat. The castle is designated and protected through its status recently established as a listed building. Any proposed change to the castle will require listed building consent, and it's a criminal offence to demolish, significantly alter or extend a listed building without consent. So I think people underestimate what the issues are around listed building consent. Her concerns around scheduled monument is obviously a different type of designation and listing. But I would say to her that Historic Environment Scotland take these issues extremely seriously, and with her correspondence and indeed that from the local MSP, Rosanna Cunningham, they're very alert to some of the issues as to what can be designated as national importance as opposed to local importance. But our points are well made.
Thank you. That concludes portfolio questions, and I'll have a short pause to allow the front benches to take their places for the next debate.